Gary is standing at a stone bar counter in Pompeii about to order a drink, and everyone in the room is about to be horrified. Because in the Roman world, there was a correct way to drink wine, and the correct way was to water it down. Drinking wine straight, undiluted, was the mark of a barbarian, a drunkard, or, worst of all, someone with no self-control. Gary does not know this. Gary only knows that he has had a very long week at the docks. It is the 70s AD in Pompeii, a busy port town of perhaps 12,000 people sitting at the foot of a large, scenic, and extremely patient mountain. Gary works in a warehouse by the river gate and lives like most ordinary Romans in a small rented room with no kitchen. This was completely normal. Cooking indoors in a crowded wooden-floored building was an excellent way to burn down the neighborhood, so the average Roman simply ate and drank out every day at the counters and taverns that lined every street. Rich Romans wrote sneering essays about these places. Ordinary Romans lived in them. Tonight, Gary wants the full experience. A drink, a little entertainment, and, if things go well, an invitation to a proper Roman dinner party. He has 3 plans and, as always, complete confidence in all of them. His first stop is the bar on the corner, and here it helps to picture the place, because we do not have to imagine it. Pompeii's bars still exist. Archaeologists have counted well over 100 food and drink counters in this one modest town, roughly 1 for every 100 residents, which tells you everything about Roman nightlife. A typical bar was a room open to the street with an L-shaped masonry counter, big clay jars set into the countertop holding snacks, and wine poured from tall amphorae stacked behind. The menu was written directly on the wall. At one Pompeii tavern, the price list survives to this day. For 1 small coin, an as, you got ordinary wine. For 2, something better. For 4, Falernian, the celebrity wine of the Roman world. The bottle you ordered when you wanted the whole bar to notice you. Gary orders the one as wine, which is sensible, and then asks for it straight, which is not. The room goes quiet. The barmaid gives him a long look. Romans drank their wine mixed with water, usually more water than wine, and the mixing was not optional. It was civilization itself. Neat wine, called marum, was for barbarians and people you crossed the street to avoid. In winter, bars would even mix the wine with hot water and spices, serving it steaming, which means the Romans essentially invented mulled wine and served it at a drive-through counter. The barmaid quietly cuts Gary's wine with 2 parts water and says nothing. Gary decides not to argue with her, which is the first genuinely Roman decision he has made all evening. He should also count himself lucky, because not every innkeeper watered wine for honorable reasons. On the wall of one Pompeii bar, a customer scratched a review that survives 2,000 years later. "May your lies catch up with you, innkeeper," it says. "You sell water and drink the pure wine yourself." 1-star reviews are older than you think. Plan 2. Entertainment. In the back room, there is a dice game running, and this is where Roman law gets funny. Gambling with dice was technically illegal in the Roman world, banned except during Saturnalia, the December festival when the rules relaxed. This ban was enforced approximately never. Every bar had dice. Archaeologists find them by the handful, some of them helpfully weighted, because cheating is also older than you think. Gary sits down, throws the bones, and, to everyone's surprise, including his own, wins 2 coins. What happens next is so timeless that a Pompeii bar owner painted it on his wall as a comic strip, which you can still see. 2 players argue over a throw. "I won," says one, in painted letters. "That is not a 3, it is a 2, says the other. In the final panel, the landlord shoves them both out the door, telling them to go fight outside. This exact scene now happens to Gary. His opponent disputes the throw, voices rise, and the landlord, following a professional tradition at that point already centuries old, escorts everyone involved to the street. Gary keeps the 2 coins. He considers the evening going well, and then Plan 3 arrives on its own, because the man Gary beat at dice turns out to be a cheerful sort, and invites him to a dinner party. This was the real Roman night out. The bar was where you drank. The convivium, the private banquet, was where you drank correctly. First, the baths, because no respectable Roman went to dinner unwashed. Bathing was the standard late afternoon ritual, done publicly, socially, and covered in olive oil, which was scraped off the skin with a curved metal blade called a strigil. The bath floors were marble, wet, and oiled. Gary, a man for whom stable surfaces are more of a suggestion, crosses the warm room with the careful dignity of a newborn deer and survives. Then, dinner. Romans did not sit at a table. They reclined, 3 to a couch, 3 couches around a low table, propped on the left elbow, eating with their right hand. No forks. Shoes off at the door. Gary settles onto his assigned couch, leans confidently on the armrest cushion, and the cushion, honoring an ancient agreement with Gary, slides straight off the couch. He catches himself, and, more importantly, catches the wine. There is scattered applause. The eating came first, and the drinking came after, in a formal after-party called the commissatio. And the commissatio had rules, because of course it did. The guests threw dice, and the winner was crowned master of the drinking, the magister bibendi, whose job was to decide the ratio of water to wine for the entire table, and how the toasts would go. The Romans had turned drinking into a constitutional office. The dice go around the table. And because history has a sense of humor, Gary wins. Every face turns to him. The man who, 4 hours ago, ordered neat wine like a barbarian must now set the mixture for a room full of respectable Pompeians. Gary thinks carefully. He remembers the barmaid's look, and he calls for a generous mix, heavy on the water, light on the wine. The table nods with warm approval, because in Roman eyes this was exactly right. Moderation was the whole performance. The civilized drinker was the one who could go all night and walk home in a straight line. Gary, through sheer accumulated embarrassment, has become sophisticated. One thing that did not happen at this banquet, or any other, deserves a word. There was no special room where Romans went to vomit between courses so they could keep eating. The vomitorium is real Latin, but it means the exits of an amphitheater, the passages that let the crowd spew out into the street. Despite what the internet tells you, the vomit room is a myth. The Romans were dramatic, not that dramatic. The party winds down late. Gary walks home through streets that are completely, absolutely dark because street lighting did not exist, and rich Romans navigated the night behind slaves carrying torches. Gary has 2 coins and no torch, so he navigates by memory, moonlight, and shin contact with approximately every fountain in Pompeii. But he gets home, and here is the thing about those bar walls he passed on the way. They are covered in scribbles from people exactly like him. Complaints about prices, boasts about dice, love notes to barmaids, little messages saying, essentially, Gary was here. 2,000 years later, we can read every word, preserved better than anyone who wrote them would have dared to hope. And the picture they paint is not of marble statues and emperors. It is of ordinary people, out on a Tuesday night, watering their wine and arguing about a 2 that was definitely a 3. Civilizations rise and fall. Bar arguments are forever. And somewhere else in history, at this very moment, Gary is leaning on something that is about to give way.